Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the latest edition of the Woke Bros. Of course, I'm your co-host, Big Wos, back in Los Angeles, California, and I'm joined by my brother on the west side of Los Angeles. What's going on, Nando?
I'm just, warming up, doing some exercises for your birthday party on Saturday. Um,
Yes,
Doing a little detox, pre.
it's
Yeah.
needed. It's
It's needed.
needed because we're gonna go nuts on the west side this Saturday to celebrate my 36th birthday, which sounds crazy to say, but yes, I
Friend
will
of
be
the pod,
turning
Danny Bester,
36.
is very excited. He's like, "Can we show up together? I'm scared to show up alone." I'm sure you'll be all right.
Yeah. It's all good. It's gonna be a great time. Looking forward to it. I love celebrating my birthday, bringing folks together, and doing that kind of thing. But today on the show, we want to talk about some things that are happening in world soccer, the transfer window. I just wanted to ask Nando about transfer culture because, as you guys know, I'm a soccer novice, and so the way they do things is so different than everything they do is different than
Yeah.
our established norms here in the States with our major sports. So I wanted to talk to Nando about that. Of course, we wanted to get into Tyre Nichols' services was today. We haven't really talked about it at all on the show. So wanted to give that a little bit of space. But first, man, front page of my New York Times website, the Fed raises rates a quarter point and signals more hikes ahead, Nando. This shit has like real world implications.
Yeah.
Obviously, these rates are being raised on individual, wage earning Americans, but also like these corporations who borrow absurd and obscene amount of money and for so many years, basically since the Great Recession, could bank on having insanely low interest rates. I think that stuff is coming back to bite them, and I think that's where you see a lot of these like firings and big ass tech
Oh yeah.
companies and even media conglomerates who, for whatever reason, they always think it's a good idea to carry this absurd debt. They're just like, hold on, these rates are actually increasing on us, and it's not as cost prohibitive as it used to be. And like, yeah, this shit has real world implications. And we talked about it in the past, Nando. Like these bad outcomes for people are by design. The Fed wants quote unquote people to feel the hurt.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean it's really wild. I mean there was this is all in response to inflation. I mean, I'm sure everyone has heard inflation, inflation, inflation. It seems to have calmed down a little bit. Obviously, the big part of it was the Federal Reserve interest rate hike, last year, but they're raising it even more. The point of this is to what they call cool down the economy to lower the inflation, and it just seems like I don't know, like you're cutting off the patient's leg in order to like, you know what I mean? Like it's one. I can't think of the analogy, but there's something akin to that where there was an inflation, like that's fairly obvious. The problem is that I think the diagnoses of why we had that inflation is always wrong, and we've talked about this on the show. I mean, I think the way the policymakers think it was is that easy money and then a lot of money being pumped into the system by COVID relief, right? The $1,400 checks,
Mhm.
the various unemployment benefits that were expanded during COVID, the loans to small businesses, and like just money pouring into the system, increase the money supply and raise the inflation, and that may have been a small part of it. But the other aspect that's not that they don't really consider is that there was fucking COVID, and we've heard of the supply chain issues with China and the supply like that. To me, is the clear real culprit of the inflation. And what they're doing by raising interest rates is like deliberately slowing down the economy, deliberately putting people out of work. I mean, you just look at around Hollywood, around media, around tech, around many, many sectors, layoffs all over the place, and it's a direct result of the interest rate hike, and that is by design. There was a time where there was that time where workers felt like they had more power, they had more leverage,
Hmm.
they had more money in their pocket, they had the ability to say no to work, which raised their leverage and was raising wages. And that's something that they can't tolerate. They can't tolerate raising wages. They can't tolerate more worker power. So they need a disciplinary mechanism, and that's what's going on with this interest rate hike.
So that, I mean, which obviously begs the question, Nando, like, is the problem that there's too much money in, like, the problem is that workers are making too much money?
Well, that is a
Is that
problem.
essentially it?
That is a problem for owners.
Yeah, of course.
For capital, they don't want
Hmm.
workers making money. Like
Right.
that is the problem. And who does the Fed serve? Nominally it
Yeah.
serves the people, but it really serves
Right, like because that exact. I'm glad you said that, because the way they sell it is like, oh, look at your eggs, right? We're so worried about you, but if I'm making more money to cover the cost of the egg, then who loses here? Oh, that's right, the people who hoard all the fucking money. It's so obvious, like that equation. If goods and services, the price of goods and services increase, but the wages of the workers also increase to cover that price, that seems like an economy that is working,
yeah,
in my opinion. I don't understand how you can look at it any other way. Again, of course, and people being like, "Oh, it's not a zero sum game," but it kind of is. If like the percentage of the surplus value that's being generated, that goes back to the worker, goes up, that means it's going down for the freaking capitalists, right?
yeah,
For the freaking the owners, if you will. And so yeah, this seems like the fix to a problem that doesn't really actually exist.
yeah. No, it's 100% true. I mean, and again, I think like it's just incredibly callous and irresponsible. I mean, this they tried this in the late 1970s and early 80s, induced a recession. It was incredibly painful for people. They raised interest rates like crazy. It's the one mechanism they know how to use. It's the one mechanism, by the way, that's outside of democratic control, right? Like,
Hmm.
who voted for this?
Biden's gonna be like, I can't. I mean, what do I do? I can't do anything
Can't
about the
touch it.
Fed.
Can't touch it. Can't touch it. And it's like we can't do anything about it. We can't rally, to in some democratic way to oppose this.
Hmm.
It's completely apolitical, which is why you're seeing a lot of societies rely on their central bank more and more for policy making. As kind of democratic politics withers away. They love that. They love that the Fed can just decide, like, whatever it is, like 500 dudes at the Federal Reserve could just decide, oh yeah, we're gonna like just throw millions of people out of work, and what are they gonna do about it? Nothing. They can't do anything about it. They literally can't do anything. What are they gonna vote us out? They can't vote us out. They can't do anything. Like they can't do anything. There's nothing they can do. Even if they remove Biden, if they impeach Biden tomorrow, they're not gonna do anything about it. So
Right.
um, it is just completely undemocratic and insane. So yeah, I always find the conversations around the Fed and the sanctity of the Fed as a kind of this like independent institution free from politics, and I'm like, that's the problem. It's fucking free from
Hmm.
politics,
Exactly.
and it's governing our
Absolutely.
lives. So
Absolutely no accountability. And again, they raised it and they said we're gonna raise it again because people haven't been adequately punished. They want to spank us on our collective tushes, and make us learn the lessons. No, you don't deserve to make more money, guys. You guys gotta be poor and suffer. Moving on from the Fed, like I said, first day of Black History Month here on the first when we record this podcast, even though it will drop February 2nd. Another thing I see on my New York Times is, Kamala Harris, first female Black woman vice president ever, spoke at the services of Tyre Nichols, who was killed at the hands of police in Memphis, Tennessee. It was caught on camera. You guys know the story by now. For a few weeks or however long it was. Sorry, I don't remember how long it was. They kind of spent the time, the authorities over there, sort of seeding the ground. Like, guys, yeah, there's a video that's going to come out. It's going to make people angry. It's very fucking horrible. And this involved five cops, five black cops, which I mean, policing sort of always shows the problems with identity based politics or thinking or representation based politics. These cops are black. They're not going to treat, you know, poor working class blacks any better just because they themselves are black. There's an understanding institutionally that these people do not matter. Their voices will not be heard by anybody, and they're the riffraff. And so we will treat them as such. It doesn't matter that the cops are black or not. Where it does matter, though, Nando, I think when a black cop does something, or I remember even, remember when we had our brother Kang up here, or even when it was an Asian cop in East New York, Brooklyn, when he killed somebody, you're more likely to go down for it. The institution doesn't view black people any differently, whether it's blacks, Asians, or white cops or what have you. However, you're more likely to take the fall, actually be charged with a crime, actually be put in
That's
jail
wild.
when the perpetrators are black. For Shosky.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously it was an absolutely horrifying thing, and just another reminder about the violent nature of American policing and the violent nature of American society. We've had like two mass shootings in California in the last couple
Mm-hmm.
weeks. I mean, these two things are not unrelated. Um, and again, I think that is also a kind of under discussed issue in terms of the violence of the police is that America is a very violent society with a ton of guns, and um, you know if you're a police officer, you could meaning like there's it's not unreasonable to think someone might shoot and kill you at any given moment. Like
Yep.
it could happen because there's a ton of guns out there, and America is a very violent place. Um, like there's a huge focus on what they would call structural racism or white supremacy, and that's obviously part of it. But there's other kind of under discussed factors that play into the nature of American policing that are just completely under discussed. I mean, I mentioned the violence issue, but also just the class issue. Like the cops kill a bunch of white
That
people
part.
too.
They
You know,
killed a lot of white people. All of them are poor as shit.
Yeah, and that's the thing. What they do kill is poor people. They don't kill a lot of rich, people of any color.
Yeah.
Um, and the sort of focus on race of the issue, and I understand why, but from a both from an analytical perspective, but also from a kind of political perspective, seems to open you up to this kind of thing. It's like, well, look, the cops were black. Like the right wing argument right now with the Tyree death is like, oh, look, the cops are black. America's not racist. Like
Even black cops do it. Duh.
yeah, yeah, and obviously, like they haven't seen "Don't Be a Menace to South Central while drinking a juice in the hood." Like they already addressed this issue with the Bernie Mac character.
Yep.
He's like, "I hate your black gums."
Yeah.
Like I hate
Classic.
I hate everything about like, but that's obviously a caricature. But there is a point there. It's like, okay, like if it's a purely a race issue, then what's going on here? And it's like, yes, you can talk about like internalized racism, whatever, or like institutional racism and things like that. But there is this kind of under discussed vector of class. And I remember the video of like the white guy shot by cops in that hotel hallway that was just like absolutely insane. And I'm not saying like, well, what about the white people? That's not what I'm
No.
saying. I'm just saying that like there is the sort of the a huge part of the violent policing question in America has to do with the class disparity in America,
Mm-hmm.
and the clusters of poverty, which is again also where a lot of the violence in America is.
Mm-hmm.
Black, Latino, white, whatever. If there is a cluster of concentrated poverty, obviously, like a lot of black neighborhoods have like a overrepresentation of that, but anywhere that that exists, there's going to be violence, there's going to be over policing, there's going to be violent policing, and there's going to be deaths, both by, from crime, but also from the police. And it's one of those issues that, you know like the boring old kind of left-wing socialist arguments of, yeah, you gotta like reduce the inequality in the society, you gotta give people stable jobs, you gotta give
Hmm.
people a decent standard of living, you gotta give
Yep.
people a decent kind of say in their lives and ability to have the some sort of hope in their lives. Like, that stuff would reduce this kind of thing dramatically. I mean, there's still a bunch of guns out there, which is a huge problem, and again, it's got a thornier, more difficult issue to solve than people give credit to, just given the sheer amount of guns that there are out there. But you got to address these issues at their core, and there's a focus on police reform, and there absolutely should be several police reforms. But as like Jacobin pointed out in this case, many of, like this, I'm quoting now from Branco's piece, like many of the liberal reform efforts put forward as a solution were already in place in Memphis when Nichols was killed. Memphis had banned chokeholds and no-knock raids. Its police department had put in place
Hmm.
mandates for de-escalation and intervention by fellow officers in cases of brutality. It's had training for implicit bias and cultural awareness in place for some time. And the cops that beat him to death were all wearing body cameras. Like, these things like aren't these are band-aids over the sort of central issue, over the larger wound, which is a class society that is horribly unequal. America is the richest country on earth, but with clusters of poverty that are, at the rates of some of the poorer countries in the hemisphere, in the world, like where other societies just don't have this level of concentrated poverty the way America has. And until we kind of address those issues, these kind of things are still going to happen.
Yeah, and I do, and I can hear, a certain kind of black person hearing the sort of I guess approach that we're taking to this issue and be like, yeah, that's all fine and good, but when you are black, and if we're gonna paint this as structural class issues, blackness is sort of used as the tip of the spear, right? It's the main cudgel that's used for to enact all of this stuff, right? It's how you get these policies that fuck up white people, give them terrible health care, no government aid, no, like, standard of living trash. It's the kind of, the like, blackness is how you deliver those policies and sell those policies to white people, right? And policing and brutalizing blackness is how you prove that you mean business about those policies, right? And so if when you're black and you're just like, well, in the meantime, I have to be black and disproportionately deal with this, I understand that frustration, that hurt, that anger. I understand that. But like anything else, because like, when you talk to a lot of black people, because amongst my friends, I'm like the weirdo, commie scumbag idiot, who wants everybody to be poor and not wearing deodorant on a commune somewhere. Um, it's this idea that like they feel like all of the wrongs that happen are connected to an ancient and deeper wrong that is slavery, right? So people feel connected to a through line of oppression that dates back to quote unquote America's original sin. And what I tell every single black person is that I don't deny the role of race in our oppression. I just think it's just an incomplete analysis of it. The idea that white people enslaved us because they're this special kind of evil people with this special evil gene that God gave them, or Dr. Yakub or whoever gave them, ignores the fact that slavery was incredibly profitable. That shit made a lot of money. That the making of the money came first. Then came racism and
Yeah.
justifying it. And maybe these people are half human and maybe they're this. And oh, who knows? The Negro actually likes this and blah, blah, blah. All of those justifications and horrible things, awfulness, the awful oppression come after the fact that the shit was extremely profitable, right? Which gets at everything, material issues. Period. That's what it boils down to. And to me, to my mind, if even from even the exception of it, the source of it is profit making. I don't see that. I don't see that disconnected to the issues that we as Black people face today. I think it's more of the same shit. Race is used as a tool to further advance the cause of profits over literally every fucking thing else, right?
Yeah.
And how we justified it is these defective people and their defective culture, and look at how they live, and blah 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 blah. Of course, we should be killing them. Blah 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 blah. By the way, you should be fucking grateful that you're not Black, poor white person. And we keep it pushing. Don't think about nothing else.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, man, and I'm not the first person to make this point, we make so much fun of representation politics, right? And how stupid it is to get hyped about Kamala Harris or to get hyped about the, Secretary of Defense, the Black dude, Lloyd, whatever his name is,
Yeah. Austin.
who literally gets plucked from the board of Raytheon. The first people who were practicing this type of politics was white people. It's literally what they gave to the poor whites was like, no, look, the white man still gets to be in charge. By proxy, so do you. It doesn't matter that your standard of living is shit. Like, but guess what? White people have finally woken up to the con of that. And they don't give a
Yeah.
fuck about that shit no more. They
Yeah.
really don't. They're done with it. And, I long for the day when Black people sort of, and this is Black History Month, we sort of move past this idea of these great Black individuals and what it means for the race and redeeming the race, and get to the brass taxes of, we need to collectively come together with the people that have a common interest and goal with us
Yeah.
in making everything better.
What you just described earlier, and someone should clip it and like send it to students of political economy, is Marx's theory of around like the base and superstructure and how culture gets reproduced, right? Like, I mean, what Marx says is that like what he calls the base is, basically the economic underpinnings of a society, how a society is organized economically, right? That's the base. And then the superstructure is built on top of the base, that is literature, religion, the laws of the country or the society or whatever. All of what we would call kind of culture is built on top of the economic superstructure, of like the economic underpinnings of society. They both reinforce each other. The superstructure is there to reinforce that economic structure.
Period.
And then the economic structure reinforces that culture, and
Yes. And
it
it's a
feeds on
beautiful
itself.
cycle. Yep.
And until you break that, which is very difficult to do, and it happens usually through some exogenous shock, like a plague or some natural disaster or an ice age or whatever, some major thing kind of upsets that thing. That is a very difficult cycle to break. But that's what it is. It's like the society reflects how it is organized economically, and that's the Marx theory about the base and the superstructure kind of explained beautifully.
Yeah, what Nando's talking about here is like what is Nando talking about? Like, for instance, something like this concept that the free market is tied to liberty and freedom, right? Like this idea that unabashed capitalism is the basis of human liberty, which makes no fucking sense. But it is baked into everything you see. It's like we are free because of this thing. And it only benefits the people who are practicing in that for everybody else to think that. It's not as if you on the individual level get to practice, unabashed capitalism. You go to work, you toil, and you earn a fucking check.
Yeah.
Okay. But yet you think this system is producing the most incredible freedom that's ever imagined. And again, like that idea gets implanted in us so that we think that like the undergirding system is just supposed to be. It's just so, isn't it so beautiful? Isn't it so
Yeah.
free? Isn't it
Yeah.
so amazing when the reality is our fucking betters are absolutely crushing us? And the people at the very bottom of our system are not even just getting crushed, they're getting ground into powder, bro. It
Yeah.
is awful what we're doing to the people at the very bottom of our system. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I just wish people would have a better understanding of that. And I think we'd be better attack a lot of our issues that way.
Yeah. All right. Really quickly, you want to talk about Cancelo?
Yes, I want to talk about Cancelo because, I read the story in the Athletic. Shouts to my man Sam Lee. I'm listening, various soccer podcasts that I listen to or whatever. And, it's this idea that Cancelo, he doesn't like the way Pep uses him. Essentially, he wants to play every single game, basically every single minute. And when he's not, he's an extremely unpleasant person to work with. And Pep is just like, yo, this dude is poisoning my fucking locker room. He's got the ear of management. Like they love the guy and they believe in his vision for the team. And so they basically shipped his ass to Bayern Munich. He's on loan, quote unquote. However, he's never coming back to Man City.
Yeah.
That bridge is crossed. It's over. Um, and done. And it just got me thinking about transfer culture in football, Nando, because okay, so in the NBA, for instance, right? You will just be traded to whatever team. It doesn't matter. Like if you are an important
Yeah.
player, here's how the NBA basically works. If you are important enough, in so much that your salary is X percentage amount of what in American sports we call a salary cap. Let's just take Dame Lillard for instance. Dame Lillard makes $60 million a year. I think the cap is at like 110, 115, whatever it is. But like as a percentage of the cap, like he is so important. And if a guy who's taken up a huge chunk of the allotment you have to pay players to make you good, his sort of spiritual and emotional well-being matters. Because if he's not playing his best, if he's muddying up the waters around the team, and you cannot function because he's so important. And so, like, something needs to be done. Now, a dude on the bench sulking who makes $3 million or is on a minimum deal, and he starts going like, boo hoo, you don't affect the winning. Getting rid of you wouldn't cost that much money. Like, we don't have to deal with you. So Dame Lillard has a say in who acquires him. He can make threats about not being a happy camper when he's acquired, but like he has a say. Portland ultimately can just trade him and the team that acquires them deal with the consequences. But like, there's a sort of give and take where a team that's sort of allocating all of these resources in order to bring in a guy as great and as expensive as Dame Lillard, they need to have some kind of assurances that he's going to play ball because he gets paid so much. He's so important. He's so influential. They got to do that. A dude who's kind of a $15 million player, like, bro, you show up and you do what you're told no matter where they send your ass. There's
Yeah.
no saying it, right? And that's basically the overall structure of American sports and the movement of players, not involving just a guy's contract is up, another team has the money to spend on his new deal, and then he goes. In soccer, it just feels a little different. What is the culture? What is it like? What does
Well,
it
the
mean
biggest
to move a
difference in
guy, and
soccer,
how does it happen?
the biggest difference in soccer is that if you have a contract with a team and you're the third string goalie and you never fucking play and half the fans don't even know you exist, the team can't move you if you don't want to.
Wow,
Everyone
wow,
has total power as to
Wow.
where they move, when they move. Obviously, like if you're out of a contract, then you're a free agent, and then the team can kick you. You know,
Right.
they don't have to re-sign you or whatever. But like, if you sign a 5-year deal for X amount, like unless you do something to be in breach, you know, like something
Right.
egregious to be in breach, you can just show up to training every day and do your thing, and you know, and you
So
and
so
so
so so so so basically, like Man City couldn't just tell Joao Cancelo, yo, we're sending you on loan to the Minnesota Timbers or
no,
whatever the MLS team
no,
is
no.
in the cold.
They would be
Like it
like,
just can't
no,
happen.
no.
Cancelo has to
They
be
had to
like,
give him a nice situation at Bayern Munich, a fucking top team that competes for the Champions League, and he's like, okay, yeah, like I'm mad at Guardiola, he's mad at me. Find me a team, or like sometimes his agent will find a team, and if he likes the situation, then he'll go. But if they were like, we
wow,
can't find anyone for you, or we can't find a situation that you're happy with, he could stay. You
wow.
know, they can't kick him out. They cannot. The contracts are ironclad, guaranteed. Um, you know, like Real Madrid has like 2 or 3 guys on their team right now who are just collecting a paycheck. I mean, just as like their backup striker Mariano, it's like notorious, man. He's like they try to ship him out every summer, and he's like, nope, and they can't do anything. Some fucking guy no one's ever heard of. You know, he's been on the team for like 5 years because they gave
That
him this
is
long
incredible.
contract. It was like a huge mistake, and he's like, I'm not gonna make as much money at another team. I like living in
Fuck
Madrid. I
that.
like being on the team. You know, I like being on the team that wins and shit. Even if I don't play that much, I'm staying. And he's out of a contract this year, and everyone's gonna like celebrate. But you know, he was able to stick it out, and so every single player in soccer has the equivalent of, like, I guess, like a no trade clause or whatever. Like,
Mhm.
and trades happen. Trades are exceedingly rare in soccer. Like, it's very rare that a player gets traded for another player. It's usually they get sold for a fee, you know, and then the team uses whatever money, or you know, they buy other players. Like it's like an open market in that sense. Like it's like like a cash market, rather than a player market. But yeah, it's
And
the players
transfers
ultimately
are
decide.
exactly the same, not just the loan situation, but transfers are exactly the same.
The loan situation is usually done to, like, you know, for some sort of financial
Okay.
engineering reason.
But
You know,
it's
sometimes
functionally no different than a transfer.
depends. I mean, sometimes they'll do a loan. Like if you're like a young player and you have
Right.
promise and you're on Man City and you're never playing because you're not good enough to beat out Holland or whatever, but they like you and they like they might loan you out to a
So that
smaller
you can go get
position, but
experience somewhere
yeah,
else.
yeah. But and then sometimes at the opposite end, they'll loan out a player that they don't really want on their team, you know, who isn't playing, and he's maybe a veteran, and maybe some other team is desperate for a guy like, oh my god, my center forward got hurt. You have this veteran forward that doesn't play that much. Let us have him for the rest of the season, and we'll pay the rest of his wages, you know, for that
Mhm.
season or whatever, or part of them. Sometimes they play part of them or whatever, and sometimes teams will be like, okay, you can have him, but then he comes right back. This is like what they call a loan with an option to buy. I mean, it's functionally a transfer. They have like they pre-bake in a price for the purchase, and when the loan is over at the end of the season, Bayern Munich has to trigger it. Um, and it's remarkable. I mean, Cancelo is one of the best players in the world at his position. You know,
Right.
like it's like
Extremely
and
skilled for somebody who's supposed to be more defensive minded.
yeah, like a fullback. He's the modern fullback. He's essentially like, I got the skills of a midfielder. Um, you know, playing defense on the wing, which is just like an increasingly important position. And he's got like he's super versatile in that space. But you know, apparently he's just kind of difficult to deal with when he's not happy. And Guardiola's like, you might as well be gone.
I have another question, and it's more towards like the sort of like, is it normal the way Pep manages the team in the sense that he's constantly taking dudes in and out of the lineup? Is that a normal thing across the board for most of the best teams?
I would say, relatively speaking, no.
Okay.
He definitely rotates more than most, and he definitely is always trying to do. You know, he's obsessive, and he's always like, you know,
Trying to tweak.
this team, you know, attacks like really well through channel 13, you know, like when they're in transition, and like I need this guy to, you know, and you know what I mean. So like, he's definitely more obsessive. There's like a more old school thing is like, you got your lineup, You know,
You play your 11 guys every single day. That's it. Keep
yeah,
it
and if
pushing.
they're healthy, keep it pushing. You know, like, Pep does rotate more than most. I mean, honestly, it's one of the reasons why I think he's been so dominant in league play, is that he keeps his players so the league is a marathon, right? Like
Mhm.
it's game in and game out. You got to be regular. You got to beat the team in front of you. You know, no matter if they're good, bad, or mediocre. That's the beauty of a league play, is that every single game has stakes,
Right.
right? But maybe it does hurt him in the Champions League. I mean, Madrid is notorious for doing poorly in the league, you know, generally speaking, and winning a bunch of Champions Leagues all the time, And it's like when you have this like kind of defined starting lineup, and Pep Guardiola, like, famously, when he played in the Champions League final, was it against Liverpool? He played in the Champions League final a couple years ago, and he benched Rodri, the center midfielder.
Hmm.
It was like he probably had some reason for it. It wasn't injury. It wasn't attitude. It was like he like
One
outthought
of his
himself.
best players, he didn't play because he thought it was some tactical reason
Yeah,
why in the
yeah.
final, and they
And
end up
like
losing.
they lose, and it was like watching the game. I remember thinking, like, Rodri would have been nice, and you know.
Yeah,
So,
because the reason why I asked this is because I'm like, yo, like this guy seems to be really mad at Pep in the way he's managing his minutes, and his time played and his starts or whatever. And I'm wondering, like, is he gonna go to a team where they're just like, no, you just play every single day?
no, I mean, Bayern's not going to do that either. Um, but it's a new situation. Like the Bayern also is like a very modern team. They rotate. Like
Mm.
these days they have fucking, like, they put like sensors on these players, and like in training they can see
Right,
if like their muscle fatigue is like,
right. Yeah,
hitting 15 minutes earlier than yesterday, and that means like they might be like ready for an injury. You know what I mean? They have like all manner of ways. Like they have like these advanced kind of stats to tell if someone needs a rest. And obviously, like some of the more competitive guys, they want to play every day. And like Luka Modric is 37 and he wants to play every day. Obviously, he's not like a dick about it, but he clearly is competitive and he wants to play every day. He says, like, I'm better, I feel better and feel like when I'm just in the rhythm of playing every single game. Some guys need to rest. It's just
yeah.
it's different for every player, and a smart coach can kind of manage that. It does seem like Cancelo's like a little insane about it.
That seems to be the general sense. Like people were trying to be like the reporters were trying to be diplomatic, but they were like, we talked to people at his previous clubs, like we talked to people at Juve, we talked like, yeah, when he went to Man City, they were like, is he gonna like it over there? He's kind of a hothead about certain things, and playing time is one of those things. So yeah, I just wanted to get a better sense of the surrounding circumstances of the transfer, because yeah, people felt like this shit came out of nowhere and were pretty shocked about the whole thing. And I just wanted to get a better understanding about transfer culture, as well as like should this guy be playing in 50 matches again? Like, is this like some outlier situation? Because like I think about, like, say Golden State's offensive system, where
Yeah,
Steve Kerr likes to do this egalitarian, everybody touches the ball finds energy, because Steve Kerr himself was a role player. So he understands the value of having people who aren't Steph Curry, Klay Thompson feel like they're involved in what you do. If you are, say, a star player and you walk into a situation like that and you are used to dominating the ball, you might not like that system. And guess what? It's not a very common one. So that's why I was just asking, like, is he just in like an uncommon situation? It's like, no, like, bruh, you can't play every game.
yeah.
Oh man. Anyway, that's our show for this week. Make sure you guys become a Patreon, patreon.com/count the dings. We will see you guys next week. Peace out.